Okay, folks, it is 8 o'clock. I want to start sharply. I want to respect your time. We do have an allocated hour and a half for today's webinar on respirators doing before dawning. I don't think we're going to go the full hour and a half, but we'll see. As I do with any live webinar, I want you folks to know that I'd rather hear you speak than me. So if you have any questions or pressing or whatever, that just go ahead and type them in the chat menu. If you want to send it anonymously, send it to me privately, but go ahead and chat those questions in. You also have the liberty to unmute. So if you want to go ahead and have a pressing question, unmute yourself. Don't be fearful of breaking my train of thought. Just go ahead and unmute yourself. And all I ask of you folks to do to make my job a little easier as I'm moderating too, by the way, pre-warning, I'm on my second cup of coffee, just a heads up. I'm super amped up. Just go ahead and mute yourself back when you're done actively speaking. I have this lovely button that's titled Mute All. I find it, quite honestly, it's rude, but I would have to press it if I see or hear some distractions or noises in the background. So just a heads up on that. But again, we are here talking about respirators. Just by the show of hands, I know most of you have your webcams disabled, or if you want to show your lovely virtual hand, just out of my curiosity, who woke up this morning saying, hey, I'm looking forward to an hour and a half on respirators? No virtual hands or chat menu. Make yourselves heard. Who was excited?
I was interested to hear what you have to say. So thank you very much for hosting us.
Absolutely, James. I appreciate it, man.
If you want, I could show you my ugly mug, but that's okay.
It's all good.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it, James. No worries. Webcam, not important. No biggie. Ernest, we got your thumbs up. Good. Well, listen, I did. No pressure on you, but I did. Right there, you go, Gerald. Okay, appreciate it, guys. All right, I see my A+ attendees here. All right, cool, awesome. So as you know, this webinar is being sponsored by SARVs. All of you are members, and if you want, you know that you are going to be earning 2.2 contact hours. And if you have the alphabet behind your name, certain disciplines, you have to have those commitments every year, right? So you are going to be earning 2.2 hours. You are going to be getting a certificate from my employer's LMS. That's going to be shot to your email there. So if you can do me a favor on your name, I see a couple of duplicates, which only makes me think that some of you may be sharing your link. I don't know. But if you are sharing a link with another fellow colleague, I see you, Ron. Ron says, gets me out of work. I love it. I love the candor. Go ahead and rename yourself to who you are. That way you get credit for today's webinar. So make sure your name on your ID there, your tag, is who you are. And again, if you want to be another A+ attendee, go ahead and add your representing employer. I think some of you have already done that. Dan Stevenson, ACWD, fantastic. So if you want to go ahead and add your representing, thank you, Ernest, you got it. You can add it to your name. That way I know who you're representing. That's important, right? Okay, folks, I'm going to go ahead and carry on. Again, just as a reminder, thank you, Ron, perfect. Yeah, great. Simi Valley representation, awesome. Love it, guys. Again, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it. I'm going to reiterate this, drive this home. I'd rather hear you speak than me. And I'm not a believer in talking heads. I'm not going to read these slides verbatim. Nobody wants a Bueller. So I'm going to kind of just provide my insight. I've been in safety for 22 years. I jokingly call myself the cool safety guy, because if you were to have me do this in person at your facility, I would have a bag full of props. They call me the carrot top of safety. I'm a visual learner. I have tons of props I come out with, and I like the active learning approach rather than just a PowerPoint and text and imagery and videos, right? I mean, you folks can do that. So I've been in industry for 22 years. You know my boss. My boss is Marjorie Del Toro. I think she was past president, right? So yeah, I've been with the company for ehsInc for 22 years. So I love it here, right? So there you go. Enough about me. Let's go ahead and carry on. I'm going to go ahead and activate my screen here. Let's see if my arrow keys work. All right, we're on to slide 2 out of 300. Joke. Second cup, I told you, it's a joke. Here we go. Leave the improv to comedy. What I mean by that, folks, you've seen it. If you are in a work environment and you haven't necessarily been issued a respirator, right? But you smell or taste something in the air, don't ad lib. Don't improvise like this gentleman here. Go through the proper steps, which I'm going to remind you folks of what they are. Everyone here is a safety professional. Everyone knows what a respirator is. And some of you, this may be a crash course, but I'm going to share my knowledge. I'm not a trainer. I don't like to use the word trainer. It's a little, I don't know, objective. I'm going to share my knowledge base with you folks. And I may not have all the answers, but I'm very, very resourceful. So I'll get your contact information and provide that answer later if I can't have an immediate answer for you guys. But leave the improvisation to comedy. Don't be this guy. How about this one? This one's a pretty ironic photo, right? Remember those days where you were mailed those AOL CDs for dial-up? This kind of reminded me of that, the antivirus CD. Don't do this, all right? Leave the improv to comedy. Let's keep going. I'm telling you, there's tons of these images out there, guys. The old water, bottle over the head. Love it. I mean, listen, A+ for ingenuity, maybe, right? But all jokes aside, I want to say these photos are staged, right? But all jokes aside, if that chemical or fume comes from that abrasive wheel that he's holding, goes inside that little isolated area, it makes it even 100 times worse. Because now it's a concentrated area with no proper respiratory protection. Can you imagine that? Oh, the old storage bin over the head. We've all done this, right? So let's not be these people, right? All jokes aside, let's not do that. There's proper steps that OSHA and NIOSH have implemented that, again, I'm going to serve as a reminder for you folks, because you folks are quintessential safety professionals out there that already know this stuff, okay? Quick reminder, we are a huge fan of quick response QR codes. So we're going to strategically put QR codes on important slides. So if you want to copy this presentation, I'm going to have your emails naturally in the registration process, but chime in on the chat menu saying, presentation wanted or whatever, and I'll send you an email after the presentation today and send that PDF over to you. And obviously you can have those QR codes later for future reference. But we strategically put these QR codes on important slides for you. So if you want to use your smartphone live during the presentation, you can point that darn thing to that QR code and you're going to have that web page there on your web browser there, okay? All right, we're going to move forward. This is straight from the OSHA splash page for respiratory protection. I'm not lying, right? OSHA has, by design, designed landing pages on important topics. And guess what? Respiratory protection is indeed an important topic. So they have a landing page for that. It's federal, right? I'm going to talk in specifics on this lovely state that we're in, California. We do have our own state plan. You guys already know this. But can you imagine all of you walking down the facility where you're at, your water districts? There's no way in heck you're not finding someone not wearing a respirator. So that's what OSHA is telling you. There's a lot of people, millions of you out there wearing or donning respirators. And by the way, I purposely use the word donning and doffing in the title of the webinar because it's not a word that I use typically, not a popular synonym that I use when I describe putting on or taking off, but apparently it's a popular term in the safety world. And I just want to ask you guys, have you ever heard the word donning and doffing relative to respiratory protection? You can go and chime in there. But I kind of got a consensus in my peers here, and they're telling me it's okay, cool. All right. Yeah, I figured you guys knew this already. We all know donning and doffing, right? So that's why I wanted to kind of do a play on words with that. And I want you guys just to reiterate what to do before you don or doff, respectfully, a respirator. Yep. Perfect, Gerald. Thank you so much. That's what I figured. You guys were all on top of this. Awesome. All right. I'm going to carry on. Listen, have you guys seen this OSHA top 10, right? Every year it comes out at what, around August, November-ish of every year. Guess what makes the list? Fall protection, of course, takes number one. There is no coincidence that respiratory protection moved from 3 to 2, right? In the pandemic that we're still in, right? So that's going to be an issue. And what does that tell you? Well, if, knock on wood, that OSHA stops by for some coffee and says, hey, I'm going to walk your job site, guess what their focal point is? This isn't somewhat a cheat sheet for you folks, right? So I would encourage you to get familiar with this list. Not one OSHA inspector knows everything, but I can guarantee you their focal point and their emphasis is on this list of 10 because they're pretty common. But guess what? I would argue though, who can tell me via chat or unmute What other topic in here can be applicable or relatable to respiratory protection? Any takers?
Eye face.
Yep. Thanks, James. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that later, but eye and face comes hand in hand with respiratory protection. Okay. And we're going to talk about that later. All right. Carry on. This is federal. Guess what's coming next? Yeah. Mind you, this one's fiscal year 2021. I looked it up. I can't find fiscal 2021 for Cal OSHA. The last publicly available list is from 2020. But guess what made the list? Again, in California, number 6. Right? So they have a total violations of 373, serious violations 30. Let's see what federal was. 2,527 violations. So yeah, that's federal. You know, every state in the US. There you go. So again, to drive it home, respiratory protection is not a subtle topic. There's an emphasis on it. So we should know everything about it. Okay. Everyone has seen this hierarchy, right? This pyramid, this upside down pyramid there. It's the hierarchy of hazard control. I wanted to show you guys this slide. I wasn't going to show it to you because it's kind of like insulting because we've seen it many, many times. Everyone uses it. But it serves a purpose here in today's presentation. Why? Because there's a common misconception with PPE. It's not the greatest hazard control, as you can see, right? Some of you are engineers, right? You know, eliminating the hazard, mitigating the hazard is number one. So don't think because you are donning a respirator that you are fully protected at the best measure possible by your employer. Absolutely not. That is a common misconception. As this visual will remind you, it is the least, which is why it's most important that you keep this thing on. Okay? Because this illustration will tell you your employer, for whatever reason, could not eliminate, substitute, add engineering controls, or add better administrative controls for your safety. So they're going to go ahead and resort to PPE. This isn't talking bad about your employer, but it's the most reasonable approach to the hazard. Now, obviously, if you're in an area that has a hazardous atmosphere, whether it's organic vapors or dust or whatever particles, you know, you want to mitigate that and completely eliminate it, maybe by some ventilation control. But not all employers have that luxury, right? Maybe because you're dealing with chemicals naturally through your task, grinding, right? Abrasive work. So I kind of wanted to throw this visual in there because, again, PPE, respiratory protection, a respirator is under that category. And this very pyramid made the cover of the NFPA 70E standard last iteration because they wanted to remind everyone how important this pyramid is. Okay, I use this pyramid almost every day. Seriously, when I do walkthrough inspections, I remind myself what's the best approach to correcting this hazard. It's in my head. Okay, folks, I wanted to kind of ask you guys this question. You know the answer, right? But do cloth masks, your regular typical dust mask or your surgical mask, are they considered respiratory protection? Any takers on that? No, they're not. Thank you, David. They're not. So I've seen people wear these and thinking, okay, I'm wearing my respirator. No, you're not wearing a respirator. Get that out of your head. It's not a respirator. It's a means to protect yourself from a certain aerosol, sure, but it's more contingent to volunteer use. And that's a good word that OSHA uses. There's a whole entire LOI, letter of interpretation, on if you're voluntarily using your respirator, are you deemed effective by your employer's written program? Yes. No, you're not. Sorry, you're not. But there's a letter of interpretation on that. So just I want you to be aware that your regular surgical mask, your cloth mask, your regular dust mask that doesn't have the NIOSH logo on the front or the tester certification number in the front is not your typical respirator, which means that you are exempt from today's presentation. You are voluntarily using those. Okay, carry on. Okay, I'm going to kind of skim through this. This is kind of like the watching paint dry section of my presentation. I wanted to cover it because it is important, but as you folks already know, the regulating authorities, there's a hierarchy of who controls what. So at a federal base, it's OSHA, and in this particular case, it's NIOSH, right? NIOSH does all the testing of all the respirators, right? And then it goes down to the middle section, which is your state plan. And again, California, we are affected by our own state plan. It's Cal OSHA, right? Not sure if you guys knew this. I heard this somewhere. I think I read it somewhere that Arizona is subject to getting their state plan removed. Insane. I've never heard that before, but they do have their state plan as well. And then the lowest one, which again, I use the word lowest, but conversely, it can mean the most progressive for your safety, which is your employer policy. For instance, I'm going to use forklift training. Federal OSHA would say, you need to be recertified every 3 years. Cal OSHA may say every 2 years. Your employer may say every year. Which one are you going to follow? Your employers, because they're more progressive with your safety. So that's why I wanted to kind of drill that home. Okay. So if your employer says respectfully to this topic that we're talking about, we'll ask you to wear a respirator, even though you're not walking into an environment that has a hazardous atmosphere, you got to follow it. You got to follow it. It's written on their policy. That's another example there. All right, moving on. This is the Fed OSHA regulation. I'm not going to bore you with that, but it is important to know it because everything that I'm kind of talking about I'm giving you clip notes of certain excerpts of that regulation. This is a federal one for construction. General industry has its own as well. And with that has their own appendices, right? Okay, that's the federal. Here's a OSHA quick card I found online. This is good for quick reference. So if you want to download that, sure. If you folks are doing safety talks at your facility, these are great complementative handouts to provide your workforce for those safety talks. Those work great. So don't reinvent the wheel. OSHA's done an amazing job with these. Okay, Cal OSHA, yes, we have our own. It's Title 8, California Code of Regulations, subsection 5144. That's the one you really want to study. By the way, if you want to do something really, really fun, hashtag sarcasm, read a standard. Not fun. But I have a little tidbit though. I learned this about 5 years ago. A gentleman, a colleague of mine, was watching me study and fine comb a standard. I'm looking for keywords. And he's like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm trying to find this certain section that I had a question on. Yeah, but why are you combing through it? I said, that's what you're supposed to do. And he goes, listen, give me your keyboard. He hit Control F. Control F. What do you mean Control F? It automatically activates your integrated web browser control or search menu. So then I'm like, what is this? And he typed in the keyword, I think was, I don't know what else, seatbelts on forklifts or whatever. And I typed the word seatbelt and it automatically highlighted every word that started with seatbelt. Oh my gosh, yeah. It saved me hours of finding applicable sections of a standard. So I would highly, if there's a little takeaway from today's presentation, Control F is your best friend. If you're having to read these regulations, Control F, type in the keyword. Obviously less is, yeah, exactly, Gerald. Less is more. So you don't want to go crazy because it's very I guess the word is literal. So if you use the word seatbelt as one word, but the regulation has it as 2 words, it won't find it. Things like that. So there you go, a little tidbit there. Another Cal OSHA fact sheet, another cool little complement to your safety talks, or maybe a 1 to 2 hour. Absolutely, Debbie, you're welcome. And maybe a 1 or 2 hour class that you're presenting at your employer's facility. Yeah, go ahead and use this. Don't reinvent the wheel. Cal OSHA has this available. Heck, I've done the homework for you. There it is, a QR code. So download this. It's a great fact sheet, by the way. Great. Okay. So go ahead and download that. Now I added this in. It doesn't apply to this certain topic, but I wanted to bring it up only because OSHA says, hey, we're not going to catch every single hazard out there. We're not going to have every single regulation or standard that covers every single hazard out there. So here's our catch-all, our safety net. It's the OSHA General Duty Clause. So they're saying if there isn't legislation or regulation or standards that apply to a certain hazard, I don't know, I'm going to just kind of, I don't know, jaywalking or whatever it is. And you're like, there's no regulation for this. Well, actually there is. Bad example. But you have to go to this. You have to follow this. This is pretty much saying, hey, OSHA, it's the employer's responsibility, the ultimate responsibility for them to provide you a work-safe environment or a safe work environment. And also at section 5A2 means that you have to follow their safety protocol, right? So that's what that means. It's their safety net, okay? And this is kind of in line to our version in California, which is the Injury and Illness Prevention Plan, or IIPP, all right? So I wanted to throw that in there just because OSHA doesn't have a regulation for a certain hazard that you're doing or duty that has a potential hazard, doesn't mean that you can get away with it. However, there's things called a controlled risk. I've seen some things that are like, wow, the ingenuity behind that. I have to applaud. It's controlled risk. I get it. And controlled risks are often contingent to pressing deadlines. I have a lot of visuals. I can do another 2-hour presentation on just the stuff I've seen that I've taken and corrected. I'm going to get to that later on. I didn't just take a photo and walk away, but I have a library of things you just would go insane about. And we've all been victim of it. I've stepped on the final stepping rung. I've done it. I'm not going to lie. I've done it. Here we go. So the first thing you want to worry about, right, is if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. You know this. So if you are deemed or if you've been issued a respirator, the first thing you have to do is read and comprehend your employer's written program on respiratory protection. A lot of good stuff is in there. Now, you're not looking at your thesis 800-page book. It should be written in a way where it's easy to understand and in a language that they can comprehend, right? That's not a subjective thing. It's an OSHA stipulation. So you have to have it in writing. Why are you wearing a respirator? You're not just going to put it on and then walk away. You have to know what are the hazards I'm walking into. Why am I wearing this? Who's in charge of this? When do I replace my cartridge or filter? That's an FAQ, by the way, a frequently asked question all the time coming my way. And it is a fully loaded question that has different variables of answers. Or how do I maintain my respirator? How do I clean it? Or what do I do with it? Can I share my respirator? How often do I wear it? That is all covered in your program. And who's in charge of that? Who's responsible for authoring that program? That is your employer. Yeah, your employer may have someone in-house to do it who's qualified, or they may hire a third-party company that does it for you. But it has to be in writing. And it has to be made available upon request by anybody representing legal counsel, an OSHA inspector, or more importantly, you. So if you want to get a copy of it, you can have it. Now, I'm not saying some employers are still a little archaic. They may have a binder out there, which is fine. But some of you that are, a little more modern, maybe progressive, they have it on their in your internal, database that you can access through maybe a website of some sort or what have you. So that you can do it that way as well, right? So I would encourage you folks, if you are trainers in this room, like myself, I kind of like to be a little multitasking and very efficient. And I add this as part of my training every year. So if I go on site and do this program for one of our clients, I will ask for their program and have them read it and tackle that while I'm there. So that way that they know what's up to date and what's current. And that way I'm speaking their vernacular per se, not just a vanilla presentation that just comes from me. All right, speaks their language. So here we go. Bear with me, indulge me. I'm going to cover the important elements of this program. You guys already know this. Number one, these are the minimum 9 program elements to your respiratory protection. By the way, as I speak, you can go ahead and share your thoughts. Have you read your respiratory protection? Or if you do have one, you're not going to get in trouble. There's no wrong answer. Or you can say, I don't know where mine is. I don't know if my employer has one, right? But I want to hear, and I want to get a consensus of you folks, if you do know where your respiratory protection program is, right? Just make yourself heard there. But number one, procedures for selecting respirators. That is key. That is important, right? How are they selecting? Perfect. Great job, guys. How are they selecting the respirators? They're not just going to give you a respirator and here you wear it. There's a lot of things involved with that. What kind of respirator you're wearing, right? What kind of cartridge or filter are you using, right? Number two, medical evaluations. Huge. You guys, oh my God, it freaks me out. I do hundreds of fit tests, right? And I'm out there and I'm doing fit tests. And one of our questions that we have to ask is, have you been medically cleared? We get no's. And I'm like, how are you here? You have to get medically cleared prior to being fit tested, right? You have to know if you're your lungs have the pulmonary capacity to handle a respirator. And by the way, it's okay if they don't. I have a solution to that. OSHA does tell you, or your employer, that there's solutions to that. If you don't pass a fit test or your medical clearance, doesn't mean that you can't continue on with that task. There's engineering controls. I'll show you guys later on. There's types of respirators you can wear that don't require fit testing. I'm going to cover that later on. So there's solutions. Don't think, oh my God, just because I didn't pass, I'm going to lose my job. I can't, I got to pass. There's a human element to this, and I'm going to cover that too, that I need to shed light on because it's important. I've experienced it. I have, guys, and it's just not necessary. It's just a matter of not being aware, right, of the options people have. Okay, fit testing procedures, very important because some of your employer may prefer to have qualitative versus quantitative fit tests. Again, I'm going to talk about that later. That's important, right? Number 4, procedures and schedules for what? Cleaning, maintaining, storing. Guess what? The last one is discarding respirators, huge, right? An FAQ, right? Or I should have added in there a cartridge or filter schedule, replacement schedule, another one, right? As I talked about earlier. Procedures for the proper use of respirators, blah, 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 all that good stuff. Another one too, number 7 is training. It's an annual requirement through Cal OSHA and federal that you have to train your employees who are affected by the written program. Not all employees are created equally. So only those that have to wear a respirator have to have training on it every year. Hence my original point, have them be aware of the written program. And if there's any update, highlight them in the training. You know, get 2 birds with 1 stone kind of deal. Right? Carry on. Number 8. Again, training on specific things you're going to cover in the training program, right? And number 9 is often ignored. I see it all the time. Just because you're wearing a respirator or just because you have a written program developed and implemented, which means that it's been standardized in the facility, people have read it, implemented, not just developed. I can develop, I can build the Eiffel Tower. Has anybody seen it? Right? So I need to develop it and implement it. That's key. Well, part of that implementation is effectively monitoring it. People seem to become a little complacent in that. When I do my on-site visits, I ask these people, where's the written program? I grab it, physical, my hands are dusty. So what does that tell me? Yeah, it's not being opened. It's not being monitored. Maybe they have it electronically, right? But you got to walk through and make sure everyone's wearing the respirators properly. Make sure everyone's following the procedures and schedules for filters and cartridges. Make sure everyone's storing their respirators correctly. You have to monitor that. And so your employer is going to delegate who's responsible for that, or who are. There may be multiple people responsible for that specific element of your program, which is why, again, it's important to have this in writing. Why is this important to have in writing? Well, if, knock on wood, you are visited by OSHA, they are not going to go based on this. They're going to go based on this. So you may do something that's a little more up to date, but it's not reflective in the written program. So that is a legal binding document. So whatever that you do that's outside of the program, that is progressive to everyone's safety, you best believe you have to write that down in there. Don't just do it and assume that it's covered in the written program. Folks, I'm telling you right now, I know some of you may be writing some SOPs. I get it. No one likes to write these things, but it's important. It is critical to your safety program. Okay? My point, someone has to be the program administrator, right? Your employer has to deem this person as competent. I like the word qualified, but I'm gonna use a competent one better. So OSHA has a definition of competent, right? So if you've been deemed a competent person, quote unquote competent person, which means by definition of OSHA, it means that you've been authorized to walk the floor, to inspect the facility, monitor the program. And if you see something that looks off or unsafe, you have to, latter part of that definition, correct it. That's the definition of a competent person. You just can't walk around and say, oh my God, why does that guy have a storage bin around his face? That's crazy. Take a photo, bam, I'm walking away. You're not a competent person. So by that definition, literal definition, I want to make sure everyone's a competent person. But if you've been deemed competent person, typically, you know, some employers have an incentive program that may be contingent to a monetary increase. We know that that competent person definition comes with more responsibility. We get that, right? I'm not saying that, but if you are competent, you may want to ask for a raise. And then be that person. If you see something wrong, own it. I like the U.S. Department of Homeland Security have this whole motto, this whole slogan. If you see it, say, or if you see something, say something, I believe. Sorry if I'm misquoting that. I love it. I kind of implement that to the safety world. If you see something, own it. Don't just walk away from it. Don't just take a shot, as a camera shot and just walk away, or a photo. You got to do something about it. Everyone here is a competent person. All right, here we go. Moving on. Okay, so now that we've developed a respiratory protection program, which based on your answers, you folks may already have that. Awesome. Now here's the important part. Again, doing before donning. You can't just put a respirator on. You have to be aware of the written program. We've covered that. But now it comes down to the fit testing part of it, right? We're at the finish line. What's next? If you folks want to unmute yourself or chat, what am I looking at? What's the visual there on the right-hand side? Can anybody describe that? Has anyone seen that? Unmute or type. What is that mechanism there? Right there, a little item right on the, if I can find my cursor, this right here. Does anybody know what that is? Any takers? All right. This is a nebulizer. Okay, no worries. A nebulizer, right? Right, so this is part of your fit test kit. This is a nebulizer. This is the mechanism or the device that creates that mist that I spray into people's faces or the hoods, right? When we do the respirator fit test, if you guys can see that, right? And there's one per chemical. We have a watered down diluted Bitrex solution. I'm going to cover that shortly for the sensitivity test to see if they can actually taste the solution, the bitterness, or we have another one that actually has the bad stuff, right? So there's two different nebulizers that we use for that. I kind of wanted to show that visual there. So medical clearance is important, right? Respirator selection and fit assessment, that is huge, right? Because you just can't assume someone is going to not walk into that atmosphere. Again, your employer's ultimate responsibility to make that assessment and figure out, okay, I see that David is going to be working in the laboratory. What is he potentially exposed to? May not be acute, may happen later on. So we're going to figure that out. And based on that assessment through a qualified team, they're going to go ahead and issue you the right respirator and the right filter or cartridge based on that contaminant in the air or potential contaminant in the air. It may not be immediate. It may happen later. Who knows? But that's their responsibility. Okay. And then ultimately, after that's been done, now it's time for the fit test. All right. Okay, moving on. Medical clearance. Has anybody done a medical clearance? Has anybody been fit tested? Has anybody gone through this process? I'm just curious. I just want to see if anybody has actually gone through this. I have. Yep, perfect, Ron. You have as well. Great, David. Yep. Thank you, Gerald. So you guys have gone through this, right? It's the questionnaire form, right? Do you remember filling out those questions? Was there anybody proctoring you as you did that? Was anybody hovering behind you to see what kind of answers? Wait, what'd you get for number 3? They can't do that because that's HIPAA law, right? You can't answer these questions while people are behind you. It's confidential. So these questions are going to ask, I forget what questions asked, but I think one of them is like, are you a smoker? Or do you vape? Or is there genetic history of people with lung cancer? Pretty invasive, right? But it's important to ask these questions because they want to ultimately know if your lungs can handle you wearing a respirator. Based on your answers, your employer's responsibility is to not look at your answers in a sealed envelope. They're supposed to deliver that to a healthcare professional And that person is to review your answers. I'm going to go and move forward here. That's the questionnaire if you want to download that. So that healthcare professional or practitioner, I think is what OSHA defines it as. There's an acronym behind that somewhere. They're going to review your answers and they're going to say, okay, yep, you know what? This person has been smoking for 12 years. Now this person I'm going to have as a candidate for more testing, which is called a PFT, which is short for pulmonary function testing. So they're going to have you blow into a mechanism to see what your capacity is. And then after that further testing, they're going to deem you as medically cleared or not medically cleared. Or in the forefront there, if based on your answers and everything goes through, you won't need any further testing. Okay. So that's the importance of having that medical evaluation questionnaire done. You cannot be fit tested if you haven't gone through this process. Now, if you've been issued a respirator and you've been scheduled for a fit test and it's tomorrow, who are you? You are a competent person. Remember, you are a competent person. You're going to catch that and say, wait, time out. I remember this awesome presenter, by the way, best one ever. His name was Eric. I remember him telling me, I need to be medically cleared. So now you're going to make your voice heard and talk to your supervisor and say, I haven't been medically. Oh my God, you're right. Can you imagine the huge domino effect you've just mitigated? First of all, your employer should thank you. The liability there, but more importantly, your health. Can you imagine you wearing one and you can't handle it and you got to take it off? Thank God it's in a fit test environment. But I tell every fit testee that if they haven't been medically cleared and they're going to put that on and they're in a toxic environment or atmosphere and they're having it, guess what's going to happen? You're going to hyperventilate. And when you hyperventilate, you freak out and your body's going to say, I need to breathe. And they're in survivor mode. And you're scratching and clawing your way out of whatever it is you're in. You're going to instinctively take off your respirator. And guess what happens? Now you've been exposed to all these toxins, all these contaminants. And any HAZCOM class has told you, some of these effects aren't acute. They are chronic. So you won't even know you have something until 20 years later. So it is critical that you are medically cleared. I don't mean to be so drastic and dramatic, I swear. But I want you guys to understand the domino effect to why this is here and why OSHA has all these steps in place for us to follow. I'm giving you guys worst case scenario, obviously, right? Moving on. I added the background for comic relief, but anybody know what type of respirator this is? Anybody? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Any takers? Well, as you're thinking about as those wheels are turning, I added the background again for comic relief because every time I see someone wear this, it reminds me of an astronaut. No joke. I'm like, this is kind of outrageous. It's a little crazy, but it is a PAPR, a powered air supplying respirator, right? And the reason why I added this slide is because OSHA and CalOSHA say, if you didn't pass your medical clearance and you cannot move forward with the fit test, it only means one thing. You cannot wear a tight fitting respirator due to medical conditions or restrictions. That's okay. So what your employer is going to do at that point, they're going to say, okay, all right, Eric, since you didn't pass or you can't go get medically cleared, we're going to fire you. No. They're going to say, okay, they may remove you from that task and maybe assign you a different duty. Okay, that's administrative controls. Remember that pyramid? Or they may go, you know what, we're going to supply you with this powered air purifying respirator, which means, write this down, this is categorized as a loose fitting respirator, which means you're not required to get fit tested. Fit testing is only required for tight fitting respirators. So you can wear this without having to go through all those processes of medical clearance, being clean shaved. That's why this gentleman has a 5 o'clock shuttle, right? He can. So that's why you see some of these facilities have those. It's a little more, I get it's contingent to budget. I get that too, but it makes things a lot easier too, not having to go through all these hurdles, right? But not everyone has that luxury. Now, if I owned a company and I hired all of you guys, I'm going to say, you know what, let's make things easier. I'm going to have everyone wear this. That's just me, right? Because I don't want to go through the hassle of going through fit testing. I'll just have whoever I assign that day do this job, and I can just have you put that on, you're done. Easy peasy, right? But I wanted to throw that visual as a reminder, this is a PAPR. You are completely exempt from what I'm talking about. But it's a cool shot. Looks like an astronaut. So there you go. Moving on. Respirator selection. This is where your industrial hygienists come into play. The more qualified people, they're going to figure out, okay, how do I select the respirator? Well, what is your atmosphere that you're going to be walking in? Where are you doing your tasks, right? And they're going to determine that based on weighted averages, right? There's a TWA for an 8-hour shift, right? There's a short term, maybe 15-minute increments, and then you have the ceiling one, which has no contingency to any time frame, just more to a PEL. So they're going to base that information, right? And they're going to also write down what type of contaminant you're exposed to, whether it's a particulate, organic vapor, dust, mist, whatever aerosol it is. They're going to write that down in their studies, in their report. Based on that information, you're going to figure out, not you, your employer, they're going to figure out what's the best respirator make and model, which, by the way, you're going to see a lot of logo implementation or logo placements. I'm not being paid to say these logos or these companies, but through experience, I have found that these particular companies they hold the gold star, the bar as far as quality and durability, right? So they're going to choose that cartridge and filter for you. All right. This is where the smart people come into play and figure that out. And they're gonna figure all that out. And they're gonna give you the right respirator, cartridge, all that good stuff. Okay. I went into the rabbit hole the other day, and I'm just out of curiosity. I was like, how many different cartridges and filters are out there? There are tons. I could have added 20 more slides of these visuals. Tons. And by the way, this particular slide that you're seeing is based on Honeywell North cartridges. I haven't showed you 3Ms or any other make and model. They have their own series, right? But what stays true is the color chart. So you don't need to memorize this. Again, this is going to be part of the employer's responsibility of assessing the work environment based on the OSHA general duty clause. Remember that? And they're gonna figure out which type of respirator and cartridge or filter. But I want you to understand the dynamic and why things are colored a certain way, because they're telling you that cartridge or that specific filter protects against that contaminant. And there are combo ones. Let's see if I can find one here. There's a combo cartridge and filter that I have here, a little thicker. One is for the oils and one is for the particulates. This to me is an A+ approach to things. Again, contingent to budget, I get that. But this is your best one you're gonna find because it protects from both particulates and the oils. So you can go that route as well, right? May not need it, but everyone has seen these pancakes, right? A filter. I just realized as I'm showing this, I didn't add a slide to this, but maybe I should cover it. First of all, if you have a filter or cartridge, if it doesn't have a NIOSH logo, do you guys see that? Kind of hard to see. It is not tested or certified. It is not an OSHA approved filter or cartridge. I say that because certain products have entered the market via Amazon that hold a different country standard. Yeah. So you have to see that this stuff has the NIOSH logo there. You see that? Got it? And also, you're going to see that the letter and the number, right? The P100, or you'll see an N95. Those letters serve a purpose. The P, you guys know the answer to the P. What does the P stand for? And by the way, hint, it's not for particulates. If you see a P100, what does a P stand for? Anybody know the answer to that? Just want to make sure you guys know how to sleep on me. Yeah, thank you. Right? So P stands for close. That's a good guess. It isn't though, but good guess. It would apply in this world, right? The ppms for sure, but it means that it's not oil proof. So if you have oh, sorry, it means oil proof. My apologies. I get mixed up. Nope, good guess. Good guess. No, it's not pathogens as well. I'm getting text messages here galore. Let me see if that's not the right. Yeah, so the P stands for oil proof, which means that it's a great filter against oils or aerosols, right? The N95, if I can find one, kind of hard to see. Anybody want to guess what the N stands for? It's not for NIOSH. I can't show, it's too tiny. Anybody want to guess what the N means in front of the 95? It's for not oil proof, which means that it's maybe designed, thank you, no oil. Thank you, David. It's not designed for that kind of contaminant, more for particulates. Okay. There's one that you'll see that says R95 or R100 or R99. R means somewhat resistant to oil. Okay. So, and the 100, 95, 99, we don't need to get into the math or the equations, how they get that, but just know that the 100 means it's 99.97, which in essence is 100, effective on the protection of that contaminant. 95 is obviously 95%, 99 is 99%. So if you want to just go 100, it's 99.9% effective against that contaminant. All right, there you go. But here's the deal. As I'm going through this rabbit hole of, my gosh, all the different cartridges, all the different respirators, all the different filters, I'm going insane. My head's about to explode. How am I going to remember all this? The make and model, the manufacturer of the respirator that your employer has been favored to use, they all have this. They all have a respirator selection guide. Download it, print it out. 3M, to me, I favor. They have an awesome selection guide. Makes our job a lot easier. They have a list of the contaminants on the left-hand side, the type of respirator you should be wearing, and the cartridge, and any other annotation there as well. So they've done the homework for you. So use these guides to help select the right respirator and cartridge / filter. They've done all the homework for you. Okay. I wanted to throw this in there too, because it's just a sample of one of their pages in there, right? Acetone, acetic acid. It'll tell you the synonym, the IDLH, which is immediate dangerous to life and health. By the way, if you are in an area that is IDLH, are you to wear a respirator, a regular tight fitting respirator? The answer is no. You got to wear an SCBA, right? A supplied air apparatus that has the tank and everything. That's why you see those firefighters wear those. Yep. And by the way, under the respirator column, there's a lot of acronyms. Maybe we just talked about the N95, OV. What does OV stand for? Listen, we're not going to memorize them, but that's why I added this in there. So that's part of the guide. They gave you a legend of what these acronyms mean. In this case, OV means organic vapor respirator, which means you should have that type of cartridge or filter. So they've done all the homework for you. Okay. So look at those guides to help your employer. It's their ultimate responsibility to do that. But if you were inquisitive and wanted to know as well, that is your key legend there. That is your cheat sheet there. All right. So now that we've done the issuance of the respirator, you're a client, not your client. Your employer says, okay, you are working as a hazardous atmosphere. You have to wear a respirator. Here's a respirator. Here's a cartridge. Now the fit testing comes into play. To qualitative fit test or to quantitative fit test? That is a question indeed. Which one are you going to do? I'm going to tell you my preference, and you can do what the heck you want to do with it. But if you are fit testing or your employer is doing that, and some of you may be outsourcing this information or this service, I get it. But qualitative is I favor. And that's qualitative is basically, it's subjective to taste or smell. Only because it's more cost effective. It's exactly what I was showing you earlier. These little items, devices here. You got a hood, you got your hood, you got your chemicals to spray into, right? But I need to be completely candid with you folks. The caveat though to a subjective method, which is qualitative, is that it's subjective. So if someone truly wanted to lie and say, nope, I can't taste it, and they're hiding their face, then they can technically lie and pass. That's the big caveat. So if you can't get past that red underline, then I would say I would recommend quantitative fit test. Okay. So qualitative is, again, based on subjective response, it's relying on taste. You're in there, you can lie about it and say, I can't taste anything, and you passed, sure, right? Or you can go the more quantifiable route, which is through a port account. It's a QLFT. And that's where you have these machines come out and they'll literally put a tube and some kind of adapter that speaks to your respirator, and they'll literally test you through that mechanism. It's all quantifiable, all measurable. Caveat, not maybe a caveat, but the cost. So you can own one of these things. They're running about $15,000 or maybe higher. And you would have to be responsible for calibrating it. It's like any other type of engineering control or engineering device out there. Or you can rent one. Another caveat is the learning curve. It's not the easiest thing to learn. And each port account unit has its own set of rules and how to operate it. So there is a learning curve there, right? But the efficiency on quantitative fit testing is actually it's half the time. So any typical qualitative fit test, I'll go back here. For me, it takes me about 15 minutes per person. Because as you guys can see, I'm very talkative. I'll have a conversation. I'll do a fit assessment. I'll see how they put it on. I'll do all that. So it's about 15 minutes per fit test for qualitative, whereas a quantitative is about 6 minutes. Yeah. So it's very efficient. So if you have a high, rate of people wearing respirators, maybe you want to just have this outsourced to someone that can come in with a port account and do it for you. Okay. All right. This is my best friend. I've kind of touched upon a couple of FAQs, but FAQs are going to come your way if you are delivering training or you're doing fit tests. People have tons of questions, which they should, right? I don't have all the answers, but guess who does? The manufacturers have. So I use this. I literally have this printout. See if I can find it here through 3M. Yeah, I do right here. See that? So I printed it out just in case I have some kind of brain fart, and that they have the answers there, right? So rely on your resources, not on your head. Doesn't mean that you don't have the answers, but I don't know, it helps. So I added this FAQ from 3M because I felt it was a good tool for me, and maybe it'll be a good tool for you guys just to kind of maybe increase your knowledge base if you're not doing fit testing, or just to kind of read through it and see what implements or what rules 3M has for fit testing. All right, so I threw that in there as well. You guys, my gosh. So I go in there and I'm doing fit testing, right? You won't believe, you would assume that medical clearance would be the #1 issue I'm facing, or maybe someone forgot their respirator, or maybe there's a broken piece or accessory, or maybe there's a missing filter or cartridge. No, folks, it's the beard. No joke. People love their beards. They won't shave it. And I'm talking about superintendents of big name GCs. They will literally come in and say, hey, I'm here for my fit test. No, you're not, Santa. And I will literally walk in, and I'm not kidding. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what I have, if I have it in this bag or not. Oh, I don't think I have it. Oh, yeah, I do. Hey. Here you go. I can't fit test if you're not clean shaven. So do not do the razor of shame. Don't walk to the bathroom with no shaving cream. Ouch. Yes, David, I see that you have a beard too. So you have to be clean shaven. And guess what? What I'm showing you here is a graphic, no joke, of what's permissible and what's not. It's a literal visual of men with approved or not approved facial hair. You guys, I'm not kidding you. That's my #1 issue. And guess what I've done? Because I'm a safety nerd. I've laminated it. You guys, I've laminated it. I'll say, you know what? I can't. And they're going to say, why? I just get this to them. If it has a CDC logo, there's my credibility. I'm not gonna have a wasted 30-minute conversation on that. And you guys, that's my biggest issue with fit testing. So if you've been issued a respirator and you love your beard, guess what? You're gonna have to shave it off. So that's a conversation to have with your employer. And this isn't biased to a sex. If women can have hair obstructions too. If you put on your respirator and the hair, your ponytail comes in and it's invasive and it's causing an obstruction with the seal, you got to take it out. So the whole purpose of this is that you can't have any hair obstruction around the seal of the respirator. So I'm telling you guys, that's a big, big thing for me. Here's a plus side though. So Gerald says, shave my mutton chops. Is that your sideburns? I think you're good. As long as your sideburns aren't intrusive with, okay. Yeah. Summer said I got to retire if that happens. But if it's not intrusive with the seal, you're fine. There's actually, if you can see that, if you can zoom in or whatever, there's some green check marks there. A soul patch, fine. It's inside the seal. You got a pencil mustache, sure, that works. Side whiskers, sure. As long as it doesn't intrude or it doesn't create a hair obstruction around the seal, then you're fine. All right. So, but the upside to that though, true story, I had a superintendent walk in, he has his beard, he loves it. It was long. And I said, sir, I have to have you shave it. It just breaks my heart. I said, sir, you have to shave it. And he goes, what? And I go, yeah. And I literally gave him this Bic with shaving cream, and his crew was with him. I think that dynamic helped me. I think if he was solo, he probably would have said, oh, I can't, I got a cough, and walked away kind of thing. But his crew was there with him because they also had to get fit tested that day. So I think he kind of had a little forced lead by example there. So he said, okay. Oh my God. He came out looking 20 years younger. So there's a plus side, vanity, right? So there you go. Oh man, can you imagine coming home after that day? I laugh, but it is a rule. So there you go. Okay, so if you're getting fit tested, or if every time you wear a respirator before donning, you have to do user seal checks to create that seal around your face. Okay, that's important. And I'm doing these fit tests, right? Which is why they take about 15 minutes per person, because I'm actually talking about this and I'm showing them what to do. Some of them, half my crowd, don't know what a seal check is, which tells me immediately they haven't been donning their respirator correctly. So a seal check can be done through a positive. You're going to cover the front valve where you blow out air to see you can feel it, right? I'm not a fan of that one. I actually prefer this one. I like the negative one. The negative one is you actually use your palm of your hands and you cover the cartridges on the side, and then you push in and upwards and you breathe in. Pre-warning, you got to tell these people when they do that, they're not going to have any air come in. So it's a negative pressure check. So what you're going to do in essence, you're going to create that suction around your face, like the suction cup on glass. And that's what you got to deal that's what you got to do when you put a respirator on every single time. So I show them that and they're like, whoa, oh, I can really feel it this time. Yeah. And as you do the negative pressure user seal check, if you hear any air come out, do it again. Adjust the straps, have a tighter seal or a tighter fit. I use the word tolerable a lot because the respirator shouldn't fit too comfortably. Do you ever see a nurse or a doctor at the end of their shift take off the respirator and they have this huge red circle around their face? That is a really good seal. So you got to simulate that as well, where it's tolerable. The comfort level should be tolerable, not too comfortable. Okay. Part of your respiratory program is to maintain the respirators. Your program should cover that. By the way, we're an hour in, just a heads up on that. So you should follow your employer's maintenance program. Now, any make and model have their own set of respirator cleaning wipes, but any wipe can do, honestly, right? But you want to clean them, which means that listen, I tell my kids this, cleaning your car or your room is a reflection of who you are. A little extreme, but it sends the message. You got to clean your stuff, own it, right? So maintain your respirators, store them properly. A little tidbit, that bottom image I put in there because it's a regular, your traditional kitchen Ziploc bag. But listen, your respirators, when they're given to you brand new, come with a sealed respirator bag. Use that same respirator bag as your storage bag. Reason why, first of all, it gives you all the information about the respirator on the bag. It already has your label on it. So don't use just a regular standard kitchen Ziploc bag that has no label on it. Use the one that came with the respirator. And secondly, another tidbit, if you are done using your respirator, don't just set it aside. Because if you set it aside, it's technically still idle. It's still working. Your cartridges are still absorbing those contaminants in the air, if there are any, or your regular dusts, your particles, they're still working. So to get the more bang for your buck on these respirator cartridges and filters, put them back in the bag and tighten them. Even when you're not using them, that's the most important part, because you're gonna really enhance the livelihood or the storage life on those cartridges and filters. Okay, little tidbit there. So use the bag that the respirator came with. All right. Okay, folks, I'm gonna use this exercise. I need you guys to help me out with this. Okay. Again, I'm gonna use the same triangle, the same upside down pyramid that we all use in our everyday to day walkthroughs, right? The hierarchy of hazard control. And I want you guys to use your head. And as some of you already gone through my presentation, you already know the answer to this, but act like you haven't done this already, right? But here you go. Drink some coffee, guys. We're at the home stretch of this presentation. Memorize this pyramid. Elimination, the best way to control a hazard, right? Substituting is basically replacing a hazard, right, with something else. Engineering controls is adding something to isolate it, right? Really cool stuff you'll see out there that people have implemented. Administrative controls can mean you being exposed to that task a little shorter. It also can mean signage, right? Alerting people of that hazard, right? And then lastly is PPE, the last line of defense. So I want you guys to memorize this. You guys got to memorize, take a photo of it. Okay, I'm going to move on to the exercise that we have here. You guys ready? I need a yes in that chat menu. I want you guys to be awake. And just give me a yes if you guys are here. Got it. Here we go. Here we go. Yep, thank you. We've all seen this. Yes? Your exposed Ethernet cable, internet cable. We've all seen it, right? So as a competent person, you guys are competent. By definition, you see it. Now you have to correct it because you're a competent person. You're not just going to watch it and step over and keep going, right? You're not that kind of person. You can actually see it and correct it. So based on that upside down pyramid, hierarchy of hazard control, what's the best way to eliminate it? Any takers on that? You can unmute or chat. What's the best way to eliminate this exposed Ethernet? David. Yes. You guys see David's response? Genius, my friend. Not many people get this. Yes, absolutely. You've eliminated this cable by implementing a wireless connection. You know what? All jokes aside, that's part of my exercise. You're ahead of me there, Gerald. Any man solution to everything is either duct tape or what is it? Or Vicks rubbing, whatever it is, right? So that's our solution to everything. But yeah, thank you, David. Wi-Fi. Now you are an OSHA inspector. You've done it. Next one. What's the best way of substituting it? Now you can't eliminate the cable, but what's the best way of substituting this? Ah, James. Yes, sir. James, if you notice James' response. You guys are, well, I guess duct tape will work, but you're ahead of me still. I like the duct tape responses. Here we go. Yes, James is absolutely 100% correct. You move the desk closer to the actual port. Are you guys catching on now? You guys are ocean inspectors. It's not hard, right? You move the desk, you substitute it to that. Moving on. How do you implement engineering controls? Hint. Use the response you've been using now. That would be rerouting cable. I think would still that's the correct answer. But yep, exactly. Under the rug. Yep, that's a good way of doing it, right? But I would say rerouting cable may better be put and categorized under the second one, which is this one right here. Yeah, I would say that's probably under that. Maybe I'm wrong. Rerouting cable can fall under engineering controls, I think. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. You add a strip to cover it, a rug under the rug, maybe. Or if you can't, if you don't have that luxury, you add duct tape. No joke. Duct tape would have been the correct answer too. But I prefer this route because that hazard, that strip, that caution tape, trim around that cord. Yeah, that way too, over the ceiling, sure. But this is an example of engineering controls. Okay, moving on. Administrative controls. I don't think there's a wrong answer to this one, but any guesses on that? Remember, it can be having someone not work in that environment as well, but that's not going to happen, or signage, right? So if you can't protect the exposed wire to put something over it, you are going to add a sign. Caution, wet floor. Slippery when wet. True. And Gerald, you are ahead of me as well. Right? So we joke about the type of heels or high heels, but what does that fall into? High heels is technically considered a personal protection. Technically, it's a garb, it's wear. So you guys are ahead of me, which leads me to my next question. What's the most effective PPE? It's all jokes aside. I mean, you're gonna fall down, you're gonna fall down, but you can technically wear the right PPE, and in case you do fall, you have your knees protected. I joke, but you guys get the concept behind it, right? The concept is, if you see it, you own it. And if you see something that looks off and unsafe, remember that upside down pyramid of hazard control and find the best way to correct that. Because we are all responsible for our safety and for our colleagues' safety. I don't mean to sound cliche-ish, everyone's heard it, but it's true. All right. Okay. We're at the home stretch, guys. I want to respect your time, but I kind of threw this visual in here, and this is where you're going to use your typing hands. You guys, you see the visual, right? Can you guys see any hazards in this garage or in this storage area, this work environment? I want you folks to put on your inspector cap on. Yeah, pretty much, Robert or Roberto, but anybody else, like, be more specific. Hone in on certain sections. Try to find what's wrong with this area. There's a lot of specifics in here. Yep, electrical power cords, storage outlets, sure. What about that big block of rock on the left-hand side? Slip, trips, and falls, yep. Electrical sharps, yep. But that big rock on the left-hand side, and then that unmarked bottle, HazCom, right? So that rock, it looks pretty heavy, shouldn't be up there. The slightest aftershock, yep. Unsafe pathways, sure. How about proper egress, which is under unsafe pathways, right? If something were to happen, look how those obstructions in the back way. How about lighting? I don't think this is proper loom. Fire hazard galore, absolutely. How about exposed portable tools, like that abrasive wheel there? Right? How about the warped shelving unit at the very top in the back? Shouldn't there be some kind of safety net there to protect any possible falling objects, right? Okay, folks, now here's my A+ Cal OSHA. Yes! Roberto, anybody see his response? Did anybody see Waldo? You guys see him? No? Okay. I know it may be hard to see. Let me move my cursor here. He's right there. You see that? Let me go back here. He's right there. I threw him in there because my uncle, which is why I'm in safety, died from electrocution and left behind 3 kids, my cousins. And his death was completely 100% preventable. And his death was due to lack of general house cleaning or housekeeping. And when I see a work environment like this, it rattles me to my core because it's personal for me. So I get it. Some people may have their own, what they consider organized chaos because it's only their area. Okay, fine. But what does that tell you? Do you not care about your own safety? Right? So try to keep things organized, right? I get it. People have pressing deadlines and everyone's working hard and stuff is everywhere. I get it. But I'm going to move on to the next slide. Remember that Waldo, okay? On the left-hand corner. Gerald, you found it. And David found it, I think. Paul, you left corner. Perfect. But now, here's an example of a clean work environment. Now, where's Waldo now? Right? So much easier to see. Same spot as before, but a lot easier to find. Why is that? Because it's a lot more organized and a lot more clean or cleaner. He's safe. Exactly, Gerald. So Waldo he can represent many things in this kind of this hypothetical exercise. He can mean that he can represent an urgent tool that you need to finish the job. So now you're looking for this tool. You're not really focusing. You're a safety guy, by the way. You know your safety. But guess what? Common logic isn't as common as you think. Haste is waste. You guys have heard that. So if you're working and you're finding, oh my God, where's my? And then you're stripping over cords and fire hazards. And now your finger has been scratched by an exposed abrasive wheel, and now you're no longer a safety guy because you are frantically looking for stuff that shouldn't be that hard to find to begin with.